Good afternoon and welcome to the B&H event space. Today we are joined by Canon product uh, Canon product educator and Kelby One instructor Jeff Leimbach. Today he's going to be going over some landscape basics that you can take with you on your next trip for some landscape photography. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. I'm really excited. I have a couple trips lined up between the summer and the fall that I think I'm going to be taking some of these tips along with me.
Sounds good. Hopefully you can carry those with you and help improve your photography chances. We'll see.
Well, I'd just like to take this chance to thank Canon for sending you over. He's also going to be joined by Andrew Lai. Without further ado, let me get out of the way.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate it. Well, I want to welcome you here to the virtual learning series sponsored by Canon, but B&H brought us here, so thank you very much to Frederick and Danny and all the guys at B&H to help us out to get us here. So again, thank you. Today we're going to talk about landscape photography, and not specifically all of about landscape photography, but just the basics. It's basically where we start. It's like a mini virtual workshop here. Obviously, I've got a very limited amount of time to talk to you today. We've got about a little less than an hour to give you as much information as we possibly can. So it's not the most ideal place to be teaching you about landscapes. Obviously, that would be out in the field, hands-on in the field, working side by side and no time restraints. But unfortunately, we don't have that opportunity now. So we want to bring you as much information as we possibly can. But before, Frederick already introduced me, but you need to know who I am and what I'm about here. So I'm Jeff Leimbach, Canon product educator and Kelby One instructor. There's my Instagram account there if you're interested in following my work. Also out of Florida. However, today I'm actually in a studio in Bentonville Studios, here in Bentonville, Northwest Arkansas. So I'm broadcasting live from their studios. I'm not the only one on the call today. Frederick mentioned Andrew Lai. He's also a Canon product educator out of the New York area. So I'm grateful to have him with me today because he is going to answer questions as we go along through the presentation. We found out a while back that I'm really bad at multitasking, so I really need somebody to pay attention to the chat window. So if you got questions, please just go ahead and type them into the chat window. Andrew's going to answer them as we go along, and to keep me from having to go back and forth and look at that. Keeps me on track. So thank you, Andrew, for being on and helping us out with that. So if you got questions, type them in. Now there are some questions that we'll have throughout the day that Andrew might not be able to answer because I took the photo, so maybe there's a question about a specific image. Go ahead and type that in so Andrew has it, and then he'll ask me those questions. At the end, we'll stop sharing the screen and we'll open it up and get those questions answered for you. Don't leave here with unanswered questions today. So let's look at landscape basics. Today, we're going to talk about safety. And safety is one of those things we talk about. If we're doing a workshop, that's the first thing we would do. We'd gather in the morning, kind of gather in a group, and we talk about where we're going to be, some of the pitfalls. Be careful when you're walking up there. Be careful on the rocks or wherever we might be. So we actually do that in a live seminar. We talk about safety right off the bat. We're going to talk about gear. We're going to talk a little bit about cameras, not specifically about certain cameras, but cameras are pretty important here. Not as important as lenses, I don't think, but we're going to talk about lenses as well. We do a pretty good deep dive into lenses for landscape. The mode, I get that question. That's one of those things I get a lot, so I want to answer that question. The subject matter, time, and then, of course, printing and sharing. We want to be able to share our images once we have them. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So landscape, what is it? So if you look online, you will find a definition that's something like this. It's all the visible features of an area or countryside and land. And then it goes on. But that's very vague. And I know that's true because it is straight from the internet accurate. But again, it's very vague. It leaves a lot open to interpretation. It means that we can kind of interpret what we want out of that and make landscapes. It doesn't really tell us how big a landscape is or how small it is, whether it's man-made or all natural. So again, it leaves us up to our creative energy to create something out of what's there. I always do that when I'm doing a class. I like to define what we're talking about. But let's go right into the safety mode. And again, this is what we do. We gather and we talk a little bit about safety. Situational awareness is essential. It's paramount in what we're doing here because we are in areas where it's potential that you could get hurt. Just know where you are, know the safety risks, and also know your limitation. If you're going to hike 3 hours to visit a waterfall, to photograph a waterfall, make sure that you have the ability to hike 3 hours back out. So be aware of your own physical limitations and the limitations of the surrounding landscape around you. Also, I suggest don't go alone. Go with someone. It's always good to travel in groups and stick together. I like photographing with other people because I learn so much from what other people are shooting, different angles and stuff. I just love being around other people while we're shooting. Also, just let someone know where you're going to be. There's a reason why the Park Service puts these kiosks at trailheads. They want you to put your information down there. They want your driver, your license plate number. So if they find a car in the middle of the night and nobody's around, they know for some reason that somebody's out there. My wife and I watch Northwood's Law. On a Sunday, if it's raining and we're just sitting around the house, we'll turn on Northwood's Law for some reason. And inevitably, every other episode, somebody is getting lost in the woods. And their question was asked, what were you doing? And I was just out here for a quick walk. I was just going to hike for an hour, and that was it. And of course, it's the next day and they're lost. So just let people know where you're going to be. All right, so these are chapters. So that was chapter 1. We talked about safety. We got it out of the way. I can thank my boss for that. He said, it'd be a good idea to talk about safety up front. Let's talk about gear. Now, this is not cameras and lenses. We will talk about that. But this is gear I want to have with me. This is gear I have in my backpack ready to go. And it starts out like this. A good sturdy tripod. My rule about a tripod is I buy a good tripod once, and then I have that tripod forever. Also, I don't want one of those little travel tripods. Those are great for putting in your suitcase and taking with you on quick trips and stuff. I carry one with me all the time, but it's not one that I want to set up and shoot a landscape with. I love when I'm out in the field, and I don't love it. I see these people and they've got their little mini tripod set up and they're ducked over and they're crunched over, and it's painful for me to watch sometimes. But I also want a stable platform. I don't want a tripod that's going to get wavy in the wind, or when water's running through it, if I got it in the middle of a creek or something. I want as stable a platform as I can possibly get. So get yourself a good tripod and it will serve you well. Uh, some type of backpack, some way to carry my gear to where I'm going. See, I've got this think tank roller, and I've had it for years. It's got over 1,000,000 air miles on it, and it's been a fantastic bag over the years. And it's great for pulling through airports and pulling through hotel lobbies and that, but not so great if you got to drag it up a dirt trail, right? That's not going to happen. So you really want some type of backpack or sling bag. A lot of times I'll go with just a single sling bag, which will carry 1 or 2 lenses in it, and then my camera around my neck kind of thing. The one I have, I can actually put a tripod on it and carry it. So maybe a little sling bag if you're just going for a short hike or a short trip, certainly works. We're talking about filters, so we want to make sure we have some filters with us for any kind of conditions that we might be in. We're actually going to do, this is the basics class. We're actually going to do a Beyond Basics next month, and I've got a slide for that at the end to tell you when and where. But we're going to do a Beyond Basics class, and we'll talk about filters and long exposure and those types of things. But I want to make sure I have those in my bag. Some type of remote control. I like doing a lot of long exposure type work, so I want to make sure that I can lock my camera down and do those long exposures. I can just use my phone these days. You know, these apps that we have on our phones to control our cameras are fantastic. So a lot of times we'll just use that. This is a cool thing. These little tools right here. The blue one is called a three-legged thing is the company that makes it. The other one is a Leo Photo, and Andrew's going to type that in. It's Leofoto, and these are photographer multi tools. The great thing about these tools is you get little Allen wrenches, you get a little screwdriver. There's a little carabiner clip, so I can clip it to my my backpack or my belt loop. And the best thing of all is there's a bottle opener on there. So if you need some refreshment, you know, you got a bottle opener there. I'll be honest with you, not a good idea to bring glass on the trail. So no glass on the trail unless it's this kind of glass. Yes, bring the lenses because we call lenses glass, right? So bring that kind of glass, but don't bring a glass bottle up the trail. Not a good idea. But those are great tools to have with you, and I encourage you to have one for any type of photography that you do. Carry one of those multi-tools. It's great for tightening up your tripod plate or any of that type of thing. Yes, extra batteries. We want to make sure we have extra batteries and extra memory cards. So I've got a saying about memory cards. I try to tell as many people about this as possible. If you never want a memory card to go bad, you want that memory card to last forever, you don't want it to corrupt, take a spare. Because the moment you don't is the moment that memory card's going to go bad on you, right? Murphy's Law has a way of biting you. So don't let that happen to you. Take an extra memory card, a couple extra memory cards with you. Be very careful about memory cards as well. There's a lot of counterfeits out there. So make sure you get it from a reputable dealer like B&H. Is a great place to get your memory cards. Don't just buy them offline. Ziploc bags. So this is not, you're not going to find Ziploc bags at B&H, but Ziploc bags are great to have. I just have a little roll of a couple of them in my bag for any occasion. You never know when you're going to get in a situation where even your wallet or your car fob or something of that nature needs to be put in a bag to keep dry. You want to make sure that you can do that. You can put memory cards in there, whatever. I never know where it's going to torrential downpour, I'm going to be crossing a creek or something of that nature where I need to keep things dry. Just always good to take that. Also, some type of light, headlamp, flashlight, because we're out photographing in the afternoon. We're photographing in right in the afternoon, sunset, those types of things. What happens after sunset? It gets dark. We want to make sure we can get back to our tent or back to our car or whatever we need to. It's very important to do that. And also just as important is to have some type of nourishment, some type of way to hydrate yourselves. I use a lot of times it'll just be a bladder like that, a Camelback bladder in my backpack that helps me out. Keep that separate from your gear. Don't put a water bottle or this bladder pack in with the rest of your gear. Keep a separation with the two, but it's always good to do that to make sure you keep hydrated. Even if you're going on a little hike. Again, those little hikes, we talk about safety, those little hikes can turn into big hikes. So make sure that you are well hydrated. All right, let's talk about cameras. Now, we're not going to talk about specific cameras here. There's just a couple things that I want you to consider when considering a camera. And again, this is like a workshop thing. If you came to me and asked me these questions, this is what I would tell you. Well, there's really two things to consider when you're considering what camera to take or what camera to get. First off, it's sensor size and sensor resolution. These are the two things that I would be mainly concerned about when we're talking about it. Talking about sensor size here, there are two most common sensor sizes. Now, I'll give it to you. There are medium format. There are micro four thirds. There's a lot of different sensor sizes out there on the market today. But realistically, we deal with two sensor sizes, and that is full frame sensor or an APS-C crop sensor. So if we look at a crop sensor, we get kind of an angle of view like this compared to a full frame sensor here. And really the difference is a full frame sensor just gives you a wider angle of view. It's not that one's better than the other in any way, shape, or form. It's just that one gives you a wider angle of view compared to the APS-C size sensor, which is basically a tighter angle of view. Now, that being said, that both formats or either format can be overcome, or the lack of one or the other can be overcome by your lens choices. So if you've got a narrower angle of view in a crop sensor camera, basically to get a wider angle of view, all we need to do is use a wider angle lens. On the flip side to that, if we need to get a more tight angle of view, we can just use a telephoto lens or a longer lens on a full frame camera. So both of them have their advantages and disadvantages, but can be overcome by the lenses that you choose. And ultimately, it boils down to what you see in the viewfinder. If you're looking through the viewfinder and you see what you need to see, that's all you need to know. You don't need to be worried about whether it's a crop sensor or a full frame sensor. The next thing I would be considering and concerned about is my resolution. So the sensor resolution, how big are those pixels? Whether they're large or small, we've got, there's a lot of different pixel depths throughout the marketplace today. I just picked two here just to take a shot at the two. 24 megapixels versus 45 megapixels. One, if the pixels are bigger, they're better in lower light situations usually, whereas the smaller pixels are more resolution. It makes kind of sense. So we've got good detail with, say, a 24 megapixel, but we have better or greater detail with a 45 megapixel file. So if we look at printing an image from a 24 megapixel file, we can pretty much print anything we want. However, the larger we get, the more chances of that breaking up a little bit. But most moderate sized prints can actually be achieved with a 24 megapixel sensor or thereabouts. And then we have much greater opportunity for larger prints if we've got a 45 megapixel file. So in this case, the 45 has more detail. So obviously, if we blow it up, those pixels are going to stay together. So in my world, if I'm going to print large prints, I may want to plan on a larger megapixel type of a camera to achieve better quality on that output. But again, at 24 megapixels is plenty for most types of prints. So let's move on. The next chapter, let's talk about lenses. I think lenses are much more important than, in my opinion, than the camera itself, because lenses give us that angle of view. It allows us to compose the image that we need to compose. So what the question is, again, little mini workshop, you came up to me and you said, so what lenses do I need? Here, again, this is basics. We're starting out, right? What lenses do I need? If you ask me that question, this is what I would tell you. First off, I try to find out what you have, right? First off, well, what do you have? Let's talk about that. And can we use what you have? And then we could go on from there. So right off the bat, and everybody that my workmates here, Andrew, included here, will know that I love these all-purpose standard lenses, these standard zoom lenses that we can leave on our camera for most situations, and then just deviate from that when we want to do something special. 24 to 240 is a lens that stays on my camera at all times. Now, keep in mind, I work for Canon, so you're going to see Canon lenses up here. But don't be locked into that. My point here is the type of lenses. Please focus on the type of lenses that I'm showing you for this whole presentation here. But anyway, some type of all-around lens. So let's start there. But then we move on to the next lens that I would recommend that you get is a wide-angle lens. And this is probably the lens that you thought of when we start talking about lenses. I get this all the time. I'm looking for a landscape lens. Well, I know what you're talking about. You want a wide-angle lens, right? That's typically what you're thinking about. So once you have that all-around lens, I would suggest you go to a wide-angle zoom lens. And that could be a prime lens. It doesn't have to be a zoom. Certainly could be a prime lens, but something wide that'll give you that. But I don't want you to forget about zoom lenses. About half of the work that I do in landscape is done by a telephoto lens. And we're going to look at some samples here real quick in a minute here. And we're going to talk about why I would choose one lens over another. And you will see that a lot of my landscapes are done with a telephoto lens because it's the way I want to frame up the image. So please don't discount having a telephoto zoom as well. So basically what I would tell you is it'd be nice to have one of each set, right? You have a standard lens that you use most of the time, a wide angle, and then a telephoto. If you've got that covered, you're in pretty good shape. You can do a lot with that set. From there, if you've got those already, let's talk about where you might want to go from there. And then we can talk about some specialty lenses. For me, a specialty lens would be an ultra wide angle lens, like a 11-24 or a 10-20 in this case, or a fisheye. We're going to look at what a fisheye will do for you in the landscape in a few minutes. So fisheye or a tilt shift. Tilt shift lenses are great for landscape. And we'll look at those as well. So once you've got the three set, then we move into kind of our specialty lenses, and you can move on and build a kit from there. So let's look at what these lenses actually do for us. So here we've got an image, and if you notice down here on the bottom, and I'm going to get rid of this. I didn't realize we had this up, but I can eliminate this real quick, and I apologize for that. But let's go hidden there. There we go. What I did was I tried to put in every image that you see here, right down in the bottom, you'll see where it was shot. I want to give you that opportunity and share with you. And the one thing also you'll notice about these shots, you may not notice, but every one of these is a shot that's easily gotten. None of this is where I hiked 3 days into the wilderness to get. Every one of these shots is somewhere in a national park or somewhere where you can easily go and photograph this yourself. Pretty easy access. And I wanted to make sure that I only shared those types of images because, again, this is a basic class. So the wide angle, ultra wide angle lens is nice because it gives us obviously the wide angle. It's wider, but I'm not always looking at it as a wide angle. Sometimes I need the height as well. So it's not just wide, it's tall. And in this case, what I wanted to see in this image was these trails down here right below me. And then of course there was some smoke out in the distance here, and I wanted to share that. I wanted to show that in the frame. So it wasn't really about how wide the angle was at this point. It was really about how tall the angle was as well. So you kind of get both the best of both worlds in that scenario. Another nice thing about wide angle lenses, and again, this is a Mesa Arch. You can look down in the bottom in Canyonlands. But one thing those ultra wide angle lenses allow me to do is get really close to a subject. So in this, the best thing is, I've got a bush here. So I'm really close to that. I'm really about 1.5 feet away from that particular bush, but it allows me to kind of force a composition that is a little bit different, right? So it's kind of in your face, right? So it allows me to be a little more creative with how I frame things up. In this case, I used a standard wide angle lens because I wanted the sky was beautiful and I didn't want to miss the sky. But for me, I wanted to show, this was in Death Valley in bad water, and I wanted to show the crusty earth beneath me, right? And I wanted to accentuate that foreground. And wide angle lenses allow us to do that. The closer you get to that foreground, the more extreme it gets and the more distorted it gets. And it can be a nice thing. So in this case, 15-35, something in that range is a great lens for that. Here's an example in Death Valley where the dunes are really a secondary subject in this case. The subject matter for me was the ripples in the sand below my feet. That's what I wanted to accentuate. That's what I wanted to show and portray here. And again, everything else kind of recedes. As I go wider, the background kind of recedes a little bit and it becomes less important. It becomes basically a supporting subject for what we're doing here. So in this case, this area right here is what I wanted to highlight, and that's what I saw as the subject of the image. And a wide angle lens for that did that again. Of course, anytime I'm doing astrophotography with a landscape, I try to use an ultra wide angle lens or a wide angle lens to be able to get, in this case, as much sky as I possibly can. In this case, again, with the wide angle, I got really close to this structure, and it allowed for that structure to be a pivotal part of the composition because I was so close to it, and it just kind of ballooned in front of me. In that case, a 1435 was used for that image, and this is an f4 lens. And some people say, you need a 2.8 to shoot the night sky. I shot this with an f4 with no trouble. So it just depends on what you're trying to get and what you're trying to do. But don't be shy with f4 lenses for landscape work, because typically a lot of cases, night sky might be a little bit different, but in most cases we're not shooting a landscape at f4 anyway, or at f2.8. We're not shooting it below 4 anyway. So a lot of times it doesn't matter. In this case, I used a wide angle lens. One thing wide angle lenses allow you to do, the wider you go, the longer you can actually hold a camera steady and get a decent image without a lot of motion blur. So I will, in a case like this is Upper Antelope Canyon. We're not allowed to bring a tripod in there, so I'm hand holding, putting my shoulder up against the wall and of the canyon, and just holding that shutter button down and doing a bracketed exposure, right? And one thing that helps in this case, a lot of the newer lenses, wide angle lenses, are coming with image stabilization. We never had that in older lenses, wide angle lenses. It just wasn't a thing. Some of them had it, but a lot of them didn't, and we didn't have that opportunity. But now, my gosh, we can handhold a camera steady for a very long time with these image stabilization systems that we're dealing with today. So keep that in mind as you start your work. Fisheye, and you say, yeah, of course that's a fisheye, Jeff. Look at the curve of the horizon, and you might say, I don't like that. One thing about Horseshoe Bend here, this is a perfect horseshoe, almost perfect horseshoe in the Colorado River, just below Glen Canyon Dam, just a little south of Page, Arizona. And it is when you're standing up there, it takes a very wide angle lens to get that. You'll see a lot of images of Horseshoe Bend, and you'll see it's cropped very tightly. It's cropped like right here because it is one of those places that requires an ultra wide angle lens, or you need to stitch panos together to achieve a wide enough frame to get that whole curve in the river into your frame. In this case, a fisheye lens has an extremely wide angle of view, like over 100, close to 180-degree view almost. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's very, very wide, and it allows me to compose this image and get everything in one shot. Now, I like the curve. I'm going to leave the curve, but one thing nice about the fisheye is you don't have to leave it that way. You can actually one click in a lot of the software that we have today will straighten that out. There's metadata with your image. So basically, Adobe, in this case, Adobe Lightroom, looked at the metadata and said, hey, you use the Canon fisheye. I know how to straighten that out. I have the formula to do that. I have the algorithm that will actually straighten that out. One button and it straightens it out, and I get an image that is not a fisheye effect. Now I can go in and crop this any way I want to, but it gives me that option to do it. And I love the digital correction that we have today with our cameras and software as well. It gives us so much more opportunity now to achieve things like this with one capture. Sometimes I want that fisheye effect. This particular tree is at Deadhurst Point State Park. It is a well-documented tree. There's so many photographs of this particular tree. It's been there a long time, and a lot of nature photographers have visited it, and it gets shot. Well, one day I was bored with what I was getting. There wasn't any drama to it. There wasn't a whole lot of movement to it. So I pulled a fisheye out of my bag, and I photographed it. Now you say, well, why? I didn't correct it, FYI, no correction, lens correction in this case. Well, why is the horizon line straight? Because if I keep my camera level my camera out with the fisheye, there's not going to be any distortion along the center plane. The distortion is going to come in the upper end of the lens and the lower end of the lens. Now, there may be a little stretching out here on that lens, but that doesn't bother me one bit. Where the distortion is here where the tree curves or where the rocks come out. And again, being a wide angle lens, we accentuate that foreground. That's why that rock is so prominent in that range. When you see normal lens images of this particular tree, you don't see that rock kind of protrude and become so much of the image in the front. But the sky and everything else is distorted at the top. I like that view. So in this case, fisheye can be a really cool lens to do some interesting landscapes. Different dynamic, right? Here is a telephoto lens. And you may look at this and say, well, that's not really a landscape, Jeff. Remember the definition we talked about in the very beginning? I'm taking it literally here. It doesn't tell me I can't do a tight shot of something in nature that I love in this case. In this case, the leaf itself. So the way to kind of extract that leaf from its background and focus just on that particular leaf is to put on a telephoto lens and stand back a little bit and zoom in on it. And it just blurs that entire background out there to get that image. In this case, again, a telephoto lens allows me to tighten up the frame and just focus on what I want to focus on. If I shot this particular scene with a wide angle lens, the first thing that would happen is, this is Death Valley, I would have to walk over a couple different dunes to get to it, right? It was way out there, right? I don't necessarily need to do that. I can put a lens on and frame it up the way I need to frame it up. In this case, it's just the levels or the layers. If I'd shown any more of this with a wide angle lens, it would get busy and it would take the focus off of that intended area of the landscape itself. So in this case, this was shot with a 70-200. Here's a longer telephoto lens. And of course, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but there is dozens and dozens of layers layered back here in this particular sunrise shot on here. We're going to explore this shot a little later in the presentation. But the only way to get this is basically using a telephoto lens. Same thing with this image of, I don't know if it's called Heceta lighthouse. I'm not sure the pronunciation of that exactly, but this is on the Oregon coast. And I'm quite a ways away from this. I'm probably from the overlook. I would say probably a mile away from this particular lighthouse. I'm way back. A wide angle lens would render that lighthouse so small. Remember when I said you go wider, it backgrounds and things kind of recede, but the foreground kind of comes forward. Well, that lighthouse would recede and it would become so small that there would be no pixel depth to even crop into it. So the only option to get this particular image is to put a telephoto lens on. And I'll let you in a little secret here. I just noticed this. I was previewing this yesterday and just making sure I had all my ducks in a row here. And I looked, and I've never seen this before. This was shot many, many years ago. And I'm looking down at this area right here, there's a picnic table that somebody threw over the edge, just threw it down there and left it. And I never saw it before. So I've got to go back and do some editing on some older images. But yeah, just be careful that there aren't stray picnic tables in your images. I don't know if anybody would ever notice that. I didn't. So anyway, I digress. So a long telephoto lens is used in this scenario. Now, we talk about those standard zooms, and you say, well, you know, some of those, they may not be the top level lenses, and there's a lot of focal distance range in those lenses. Can we really use those to shoot landscapes? Will the images turn out as good as they can be, or good enough to use? And I would say yes. I would say a lot of times I will take this lens on a family trip. It's not really a shooting trip, but I want to make sure that if I'm there and something presents itself, I want to make sure that I can capture that scene, even if it's, again, a family trip and not necessarily a photo trip. So my all-around lens works perfectly fine. And the quality of these lenses these days, and the new cameras and all the technology in them, and the ability to sharpen things in post-production, it's incredible these days. In fact, this particular image, again, not from the best lens in the world, kind of a middle-of-the-road quality lens. And I was able to print this quite large for my daughter and son-in-law's living room, and it turned out fantastic. No problem. Again, anytime you're traveling, this is I'm driving up a road in on the Klondike Highway in Alaska, right? And I have very few lenses with me. I had the 24 to 240. Obviously, I may have had a 16, the little 16 wide angle prime lens, and that's all I took on this particular trip. But I knew there was going to be some beautiful landscapes along the way, so I want to make sure I'm prepared for that. But yeah, these standard zoom lenses are fantastic. Now we could get, obviously we're going to get into some specialty lenses here. In this case, this is Hanalei up here in Kauai. A tilt shift lens comes into play here because it allows me to tilt the camera or keep the camera level and then frame it up the way I want to. If I tilted the camera, these pillars here would be offset. They would basically find their nodal points or their perspective points. So we don't want that. We want straight poles. So this allows the tilt shift lens allows me to shift it and keep those poles straight. Another thing that a tilt shift lens can do is it can shallow out, or it can change your focal plane. And focal plane, your depth of field is all dependent on your focal plane. So if you can make your focal plane more parallel to the plane that you want to focus, then you can actually get a deeper depth of field and get more things in focus. Like this is in focus all the way back. The mountains are in focus. Everything's in focus because I shallowed out the focal plane. And that's one thing nice that these tilt shift lenses allow us to do is to do that. It takes a little bit more work, I understand, but it's a tool that works great if you need it. Now, this is an odd section because most people say, well, what are your settings? I get that all the time, but this is another question that I get, and I got it a lot on the workshops, is what mode do I use? What do I need to be in? Do I need to shoot in manual? Well, you don't need to. There's a couple things to consider. There's basically three things I want you to consider. You don't have to make this any more complicated than this because our cameras are so good these days, and we spend a lot of money on our cameras. So let the cameras do their job. And the job is that the camera, a lot of times, is to figure things out for you. So consider these three things. First off, do I want to control motion? Is there something moving in my image that I want to control? In this case, it's a waterfall. I want to control that water flow. I want to control whether I want to determine whether I want it smooth. I was smooth and smooth, silky water. I was trying to merge smooth and silky, and it wasn't working. Do I want silky water, or do I want to freeze those droplets? If it's about motion, I want to be in TV mode, TV or shutter priority. That means that I set the shutter speed for the motion to control that motion, and the camera selects everything else. I don't have to be worried about anything else in this case. Again, it doesn't have to be any more simple than that. And in my second class, in the Beyond Basics class that I'm going to do next month, I will talk about long exposure, and we'll talk about how that works with these waterfalls. But in this case, the next thing I want to consider is, do I want to control my depth of field? Here's the image. If I don't have movement in my image, all I'm concerned about here is how much of this frame is in focus. Is the gravel road in focus? Is the trees in the back in focus? Is my subject in focus? I don't care about the movement in this because I'm not trying to control movement. I'm on a tripod. If this is a 1 minute exposure, I'm probably okay with that. probably not. But if it's a multiple second exposure, I could be fine with that because I'm on a tripod. And we talked about that sturdy tripod up front. But there's nothing moving to disrupt this image. In that case, let's just go with AV, or aperture priority. This basically says that I choose the aperture. Let the camera choose the shutter speed. I don't, like I said, I don't care how long it is, right? I've got a 2-second timer or my controller, and off and running with that. The next thing is, do I want to overrule what the camera says? This might be the only time that I'm actually in manual mode. In this case, I don't want the camera to determine the settings here. In this case, I'm going to put light on this subject. This is the middle of the night. So if I decided to let the camera judge what the shutter speed and everything should be, the camera's not going to be able to expose, the camera would expose this for so long that it would be a horrible image. In this case, I want a set 20-second exposure, and let the camera, let the light that you put on the subject make that exposure. So in this case, I want to overrule what the camera is going to say. I want to set my ISO, my shutter speed, and my aperture. Now, if you are experienced in landscape work or any type of photography, you may be in manual mode. You may know exactly how you want to set things up. But if you're just starting out, again, this is basics class, you may decide to let the camera do some of the work for you in those other modes. So I could be in manual, aperture value, or time value, shutter priority, basically. So that's as simple as it actually has to be. All right, this is my favorite subject, and it happens to be subject. So let's talk about that. So I have two ways of looking at images, especially landscapes. I look at the grand view, and I talk about the grand view. You always have to capture the grand view, and this is the type of image that we look at when we talk about landscape, is kind of that wide angle. We talked about that with lenses, the grand view of things. Very important to get the grand view of things. But don't forget the details. There are so many details in landscapes that are every bit as interesting of an image. It's just different, but they're both landscapes. They're both there. There's a saying that says, when is the best time to take a vertical shot of something? And it's right after you take a horizontal shot. So I'm gonna mix it up here, and I'm gonna say the best time to take a detailed shot is right after you take the grand view shot. And both of these are right there. This particular tree set, these aspen trees, were taken on the same morning that this was shot, just a little closer, maybe with a telephoto lens, just a little closer. And it's all right there. So there are plenty of opportunities to get shots that aren't kind of the grand view shot. Here's a great example of that. So this is Mesa Arch. This is in Canyonlands. And on any given morning, you're going to find 40 to 50 photographers here at this particular set. And I want you to notice a couple things. First off, I want you to notice everybody standing around waiting. Also, if you look, and you're not going to be able to see this, but every lens on there is a wide angle lens. Everybody is standing there to get this particular shot. That's kind of the grand view. This is like almost the holy grail of shots for Mesa Arch. Everybody wants it. Only one person is going to come away with the shot that they wanted to get on this in this particular space, and that is the person that gets there first. It's a strange dynamic up there. I've seen arguments. I saw a person kick somebody else's tripod and then try to explain that it was an accident when it wasn't, kind of a thing. But this can be a hectic, crazy spot to photograph. I got a trick for you. This particular shot I was not the first person there. I was not on a tripod. I waited for everyone else to finish photographing this particular spot. And then once they got it on their screen, they bolted. I walked right up with a fisheye lens and shot it handheld, plenty of light. And I was able to get this shot while everyone else was kind of dispersed. But in the meantime, while they were standing around waiting, I put a telephoto lens on. I started scouting around looking for other images. So in this case, this image it boiled right out of there. It's there the whole time. None of those people actually looked at it. Nobody saw it because they were all waiting for that grand view shot. So this is going to sound odd, but I'm going to say it because it's backwards from the way you've always heard it in your life. Don't miss the tree for the forest. That's not the way it's supposed to be said, but this is the way I want you to look at it. Don't miss the tree. Don't miss an image out there because you were so focused on the forest itself, right? Don't just always focus on the grand view. You got to get it. I agree. You got to get it. But the details can be pretty incredible. Here's another example, Death Valley, right? A lot of times these dunes, this is mesquite flat dunes. So this is a great landscape to shoot wide. But if you just turn around, this was shot actually on the same morning. And you can tell I want you to back it up one step here. This is how you can tell that it was wintertime. January, February, perfect times to go to Death Valley. There's a guy way out there. He would not be way out there in the summertime. So I encourage you, if you go to Death Valley, go in the wintertime. Summertime, not so fun. Anyway, again, I digress. It's easy for me to get off track. See, that's why I told you I couldn't multitask, right? That's why I'm not answering questions. That's why Andrew's here. Thank you again, Andrew, for being here. Yeah, so this image was taken right after the other one, soon after the other one, on the way back to the car, right? There are these details in the landscape that can be pretty spectacular if you start narrowing down that focus a little bit and seeing those details. So I love doing like leaves, find simplicity in the details, right? And again, we see this image again, because in this case, I love the shape of that leaf, and I wanted to isolate that leaf. There are other leaves on that branch. There are other branches on that tree. There are other trees in that forest. But by taking a telephoto lens, in this case, it was a 70-200, I'm able to actually blur out that background by zooming in. It doesn't, in this case, it doesn't matter if it's what your f-stop is. It's actually the lens compressing that background and making those trees in the background in the forest disappear. You need a little bit of space for that, but it worked out really well in this particular case. So if you want to isolate something, pull out a telephoto lens and see if you can't achieve what you need to. Time is important. It's often said that the best time to go out and photograph landscapes is in the morning and the afternoon. So let's kind of look into that a little bit. So here's one. This is a third of my one of my landscape workshops crews going out early morning in the dunes, wintertime, right? This is Death Valley. We said wintertime. See, everybody's got a coat on. That's fine. But mornings are great because mornings just have this rich quality of light that I like. This was taken in Grand Tetons. We were actually we had the morning shoot at a lake. We had a fly fisherman out there at a lake, and then on the way back, I just had to pull over on the side of the road because this one aspen tree up against those others. There's contrast. We talk about contrast in light and dark all the time, but there's also contrast in color that can help in a lot of cases as well. So I encourage you to look for these contrasts in color and shape and subject. There's always contrast out there. Mornings are great if you're around some body of water, especially on a cool morning where the water is warm and the air is cool, and you get that steam coming up. It's always quite nice. And then of course the birds are chirping, right? And it's very serene and very peaceful out there. There's something about those mornings where you've gotten up before the sun comes up, way early in the morning. You didn't want to get out of bed, but you did it anyway. And it's freezing cold. You get your gear out. You get to the site that you want to photograph, and all of a sudden it's just cold, and you're standing there. You got everything set up. You're waiting, and then you see the sun cascade across the landscape, right? And it's getting close. It's coming soon, and all of a sudden the light hits your subject, and all of a sudden you're clicking away. You're not thinking about how cold it is anymore, and then that warm hits you. There's something about those mornings that are pretty spectacular. But can we photograph landscapes in the middle of the day? Well, absolutely, we can. In this case, this is the Narrows in Zion National Park. The light doesn't even come into the canyon till later in the day. Find something else. Find some of those details. Maybe there's a little brook in the forest that you can go photograph rocks or something. In this case, again, light doesn't penetrate these canyons, these slot canyons, until later in the day. So you got to wait. This case, the Narrows again, that light's not going to hit that wall till that sun is high enough to clear the other side of the canyon. So there are plenty of opportunities during the day, the midday, to get landscapes. In this case, this was in Banff National Park. There was some kind of atmospheric haze that came through, made a nice image. Afternoons. Why do we like photographing the afternoons? Two things: warm light and long shadows. So Monument Valley. Warm light, long shadows. In this case, just driving down the road in Kauai, in a cow field, basically, and this tree, that quality of light, that warm light hitting that tree was too much to pass up. So stop and take that shot. Delicate arch here, again in the evening, sunset time, long shadows, warm light. Same thing with Mormon Road here, the Tetons. Wait for that opportunity, for that sun to richen up for that. But then we go into the evening, right? In this case, this is Second Beach in Olympic National Park, and the little hole in the rock there. But the sunset, as long as we have a nice landscape against it, can be a pretty powerful image. We let the sun go down, there's still light. There's still plenty of opportunity to capture a landscape. Yes, it's got a man-made structure in it, but still a landscape. In this case, it's almost like an alpine glow that night. And it was pretty spectacular light that came through. Middle night moonlight. Moonlight can be a great opportunity to photograph, especially if it's a full moon like it is here. I get this question all the time. Is this a multiple exposure? Well, yeah, it's two exposures. I exposed for the moon. The next shot I exposed for the tree in the background there. Yes, I composited it together. It is impossible to get the dynamic range to photograph that moon at a proper exposure and the tree at the same time. So I have no trouble doing this. Then we've got a shot here where I didn't expose for the moon here, and this is moonlight in the Grand Tetons as well, and you get a little different view of that. But things changed at night. Look at this particular image of the Golden Gate Bridge compared to that other image of the Golden Gate Bridge, right? It's a different scenario altogether. Astrophotography is becoming more and more popular because of the performance of our cameras. We're getting faster lenses. We're getting we're getting cameras that will handle low light situations so much better that it's pretty incredible the things that we can capture now and how easy it's becoming. So there's this whole movement doing astrophotography. Little light painting in there. I use my headlamp to pop a little bit of light on this particular structure at Cliff Dwellers. Maybe you take a light yourself, wait for everybody to leave. You know, everybody's gone for the night, and you stay out there and you put some light on a structure. This is Delicate Arch in Arches National Park after everybody leaves after sunset. How about this? This is El Capitan. It took 4 of us to light paint this. So 4 of us, one person to trigger 4 cameras, and the other 3 to paint this. So I had some friends help with this. Buddy Dave Black was down here. He shot light on this side of the rock. Randy Van Dynen shot light on this side of the rock. My buddy Rob Sylvan believe did the cameras and helped light the foreground with me in the foreground here. So again, 4 people it took to do this, but after everybody is gone for the day. Use light to isolate a subject. Thor's hammer here in Bryce National Park with some man-made light on it, again, around 1:30 in the morning. So let's talk about printing and sharing your work. What's the sense in going out and making all these beautiful images if you're not going to share them with people? Share your image. Set them free, I always say. Set them free. I love printing. So I've got a great Canon printer. I love watching that print come off, and I can actually hold my images. There's something tangible about holding a print that no screen, no phone monitor, or nothing, no electronic can kind of match this scenario. So watching those prints come out and hold them. I love gifting images. So print them up, frame them up, gift them. Frame them and hang them. My entire house is just covered in imagery. I love collecting images from other people. I'll hang my own stuff. I'm not bashful about sharing my work. So hang them. Let people see them when they come to your house and visit and enjoy your photography. Share them on posts. Social media is a great platform to get your work out and get it seen by people. Book it. I love making books these days. These are fairly inexpensive now. They're easy to make. And I encourage you to, if you get an opportunity, you got a trip, make a family book out of that trip and just have it on your coffee table for people to enjoy. Slides. I love slideshows. We don't do this enough anymore. I grew up with my grandfather would travel the world. My grandparents traveled the world, and he took slides. He'd come home and we'd sit and watch these slideshows at night. And it was the clicking of the projector, all these things come together. The smell of the burning bulb, the dust in the thing, the frame, the fan motor blowing, all of these things had a deep impact on me growing up and help contribute to my love of photography. These days we've got digital assets now and programs that can make these digital slideshows where we can add music to the background and everything. It adds an emotional response and something different. It adds drama to your images. There's a reason why Hollywood uses sound and music in backgrounds of movies and TV shows and commercials, because it is so empowering. In fact, it's so empowering. I want to show you a sample of this. These images you just saw static on your screen. Now take a peek, just take a minute, sit back and relax for just a minute and watch these images go by as they're set to music and tell me if there's not a difference. Give it a second. Did you notice the difference? I do every time. I'm going to leave you with one final thought. Sometimes you just need to put the camera down, and that's odd coming from a camera company guy, but sometimes you just got to do it and just be in the space, be in the place, absorb the environment. A friend of ours did a study when he was doing a blog post. So he studied the about remembering an image and remembering a place. And if you just go to a place and you just take an image and you walk away with that image, you'll remember that you have an image of that place. But if you take a few minutes to just sit back and absorb everything, you see the location, smell the location, taste it, hear it, all of those things go into one, that emotional response to a place where you are. You will not only remember that you took a shot there, but you'll remember the image itself. I remember every one of these images that I took. I remember being there. I still feel a lot of the same way that I felt when I was there. And it's because I take the time to just be, sit back and just be. Now, I promised I wanted to tell you about the Beyond Basics. We're going to do that July 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern time on B&H on the YouTube channel. So check us out then. Also, I wanted to leave you with, again, my Instagram account. I love seeing images that other people are shooting. Frederick is going on a trip here. I want him to actually post those images and send me a note in Instagram, and I want to be able to get to and look at those images. I enjoy seeing the feedback from that. I enjoy seeing other people's images. So if you have an opportunity, please go ahead and check out my Instagram account. I don't post anything but images on that particular account. So give that a whirl and give me a follow. I'll give you one back. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to go right over to Mr. Andrew. And I see my nice thing is my webcam here. And again, I'm not in my studio, so I'm not set up the way I normally am. So I'm just going to unplug this real quick and then plug it back in. Hopefully it comes back for me. How are we doing on questions there, Mr. Andrew?
I think we're all good on questions. So someone had maybe you might be able to answer this question a little bit better than I am. So this person, she's using a Nikon D 7200 with a 70 to 300 millimeter lens.
Okay.
And for one, we know that that camera does not have IBIS available. So if she were hand holding the camera and didn't want to use a tripod, what would be an optimal solution for her?
First thing is no caffeine during the day. Okay. So no caffeine. De-stress yourself. Take some breaths. When you see target shooters, the Olympic target shooters and everything, when they go to shoot those targets, they breathe, right? And they breathe and they get themselves set, and they always take that shot on the bottom of their breath, right? When you exhale and you leave yourself settled and based, that's when I would do it, right? Just breathe a little bit, all the way down, hold it and click. Another thing I wouldn't do is I just roll my finger over the shutter. I don't press the button down. I roll it over and I hold it there. I don't immediately lift my finger. I hold it there till the shutter is completely done with the process. That way I don't have the shake of lifting my finger up. So these are techniques you can work on. Friend of mine taught me years ago, actually Joe McNally taught me years ago to go left-eyed and hold the camera up against your shoulder, against your left shoulder. And you can actually hold that camera so much steadier if you do it. Hold that camera, corner of that camera up against your left shoulder, and you can hold that camera so much steadier. So there's a lot of tools and a lot of things you can do to hold that camera steadier if you need to.
Also, there's another part to her question. She was asking, sometimes she feels that she sets her camera settings properly to what she thinks would be good, but the camera doesn't fire. So I said it could be either one, she's too close to the subject, or it could be that the lens is not catching focus?
It's typically a focus issue. Yeah, if your camera's not firing, it's yeah, you hit it right on the head. There, a lot of times you get too close to your subject. Every lens has a minimum focus distance, and if you're within that minimum focus distance, there's no way your lens is going to actually focus. So back yourself up just a little bit. You may have to reframe your image or crop later because you're further back, but it's a great option to do that.
As far as other questions, I think I covered pretty much everything else.
Oh, I took a look at the chat, and one of the things that was pointed out, it's not a question, but I thought it was a good suggestion. Scott from the chat, during your gear recommendations, also recommended a small first aid kit or bandages. So I thought that was the next point to throw in.
No, that's actually great, and I've got a pocket in my backpack that has Band-Aids and alcohol wipes and that kind of thing. It's true, and with the when I did the landscape tour, this workshop tour, we actually needed to be able to operate in the national parks. We needed to be first aid certified with the Red Cross, so we needed that license for that. So we always had a pack with us as well. So that, yeah, very important. Correct.
One of the things that, I mean, other than the top tip that we got during the green room about having sugar, keep the energy up for this, but don't miss the tree for the forest. That one stuck. We have our regular host, our all-star host, Eric. He usually says, gives the advice to everyone watching that they should be working the scene, that, when you're there to take the shot, it doesn't just have to be the one shot, but if you're on the hike, if you're in nature and you have this preset notion of the shots that you're supposed to have, you might be missing the tree for the forest. So I think that was
Absolutely.
a great shot. Great idea.
I remember one time, just a quick story here. I remember one morning at El Capitan, Yosemite, and everybody got out of the cars for the workshop, and everybody ran to set up on the riverbank there, set up their tripods and everything. But on the ground along the way, there were these beautiful little leaves that had the ice crystal, almost like my image from Yosemite on the tree, with the crystallized frost on the edge. But all of these on river rocks, very colorful river rocks with these frosted edge leaves, and nobody paid attention to them. Everybody ran off to the to get that grand view of El Capitan. And finally I said, that's not going to happen for like 45 minutes or an hour, right? We're here early. Explore, find these little details in nature that are fantastic and can make pretty incredible images.
Well, I am 100% happy that you will be coming back for a deeper dive with your Beyond Basics class. That's, again, it's going to be happening July 18th at 1 p.m. Right here, same bat time. Wait, different bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah, different bat time. Be careful about it. You're gonna, if you chime in the same bat time, you're gonna miss me by an hour. So I'll be around.
I mean, if you'd like to find more content like this, just search BH Event Space on YouTube. This play, if you caught it from the middle, the replay will be available right away. Jeff, Andrew, an hour and 10 minutes. I think we're good for today. I am glad that we're going to have the opportunity to connect with you guys again come the 18th. I'd like to thank Canon, Jeff, Andrew, everybody watching at home. This has been a great session. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
I enjoyed it. Have a great evening.
You too. This has been another edition of the B&H Event Space. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening.